Welcome back to Invest Africa. Kenya's 2030 vision is a development strategy aiming to accelerate growth, reduce inequality and manage scarcity. This will not only be reflected by the growth in its GDP numbers, but by the country's ability to transform itself into a magnet for business investment.
The largest share of Kenya's electricity comes from hydroelectric stations. However, when drought occurs, this reduces water flow, which inevitably causes a shortage in electricity supply. In a bid to become more energy efficient, Kenya is looking to build a nuclear power plant by 2017. And bearing in mind the 2030 vision of a sustained 10% per annum growth rate from 2012, a reliable energy source is key to implementing this plan. But an important question that needs to be answered is how attainable is this goal?
We're going to see unemployment increase. When you have productive young people who are unemployed, you cannot have your economy growing at 10% per annum. It's just unsustainable. It's not possible.
Despite the macroeconomic challenges that the country may face, the discovery of oil on Kenyan land came as a welcome surprise.
We have a population of over 120 million, and we have now discovered oil in Uganda. We still have oil in Southern Sudan, and also oil in Kenya. Tanzania has a lot of gas. So when you look at the whole thing, you find that the environment is positive and will contribute to economic growth.
Companies such as General Electric have found the country to be an attractive business destination, not only due to its geographical positioning, but to a weaker presence of trade unions.
The result of this, in the form of the companies which are relocating from South Africa to use Nairobi as a head office. Airtel is using Nairobi as a regional headquarters. We have Coca-Cola has moved from South Africa, has built a headquarter here. General Electric has moved from South Africa to here. And many other companies have shifted their head offices to Nairobi. And the objective is to cover the region, because the region is now on a growth momentum as a whole. The other major development you can say is the development of the bond market. The Treasury, the government has issued a lot of bonds, and the Treasury bonds, and the market is very vibrant. Also, the government has come up with infrastructure bonds, which are also, used to raise money to finance infrastructure roads and many other areas.
Kenya will need to continue with improved political and economic policy formulations in order to retain its title as East Africa's powerhouse. Tumisha Mahanyele, Johannesburg.
Still with me in studio, Sven Richter, head of Frontier Markets Renaissance Capital, Johnny Aucamp, he's General Manager Strategic Relations and Business Development Africa at MTN Business, Yaron Assabi, CEO of Digital Solutions Group and from our bureau in Nairobi, Martin Oduor-Otieno, he's the CEO Kenya Commercial Bank. Martin, let's throw it back to you in Nairobi. Do you think that Vision 2030 is a realistic target?
Well, you've got to put a stake on the ground when you talk about this. And at the moment, what Vision 2030 is doing, it's providing that rallying call or rallying focus point that everything is then attuned to. And therefore, what we are seeing is programs that across all the sectors of the economy that are aimed towards achieving the targets for Vision 2030. If we look at what's happening, as we've discussed, on the infrastructure side, a lot of initiatives that are meant to support the other sectors of the economy through development of infrastructure. If you look at the institutional strengthening on the back of the recent new constitution, again, a lot of those are all targeted at supporting the Vision 2030 objectives, and even in the social sector. So across the economic, social, and political pillars of Vision 2030, everything is tuned towards that. There will obviously be challenges. I mean, there was delay in terms of the whole inception of Vision 2030 because of the challenges post the last elections in 2007, 2008. And so it took off to a slow start, but what we've seen in the last couple of years is that it's all beginning to come through, and we are seeing some of the flagship projects now beginning to come on stream. So I would say it's early days. I would say that the vision has been set. At the moment,
Martin, I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to bring it back to studio at this point. Johnny, public-private partnerships, are they key to Vision 2030?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't do it without it. If you look at the three pillars that were discussed now, the economic, the social, and the political pillars, each one of those requires infrastructure. Government alone cannot put that infrastructure in place. It requires us to get involved. And if you look at the key Vision 2030, they've said it's in line with the Millennium Development Goals. So they've actually brought all of it together and they've said, let's break it down into these 5-year chunks. Now, to break it down into 5-year chunks, to do it by yourself as a government institution, not practical. To do it alongside private enterprise, very practical. We are willing to get involved. A lot of other private companies want to get involved. It's about government saying, I want to do this, who's going to help me?
Where's the money going, in your view, right now? With the discovery of oil in Kenya, have we gone back to oil mining and gas being the key hotspots?
It's very important, but it's not the only part of Kenya that we've seen opportunities and developments in. If anything, it's probably a bit too early to see the money really flow in terms of the oil because it's only just been discovered. It still has to be proven exactly how much it is, where it is, and then it'll be a 3, 4, 5-year program before they're going to see any oil come out of this. So yes, the money is going into research and into looking for this, but you also see money going into tourism, into technology, into all different
agriculture.
parts.
How important is agriculture right now?
Agriculture is extremely important. If you actually look at the whole of Africa and just as Kenya as well, what we produce in Africa is very, very small in terms of what we can produce. And as the world grows, we need more and more production in Africa, but we need that to come with infrastructure because there's no use producing in a field and then seeing some of your cereal rot before it actually comes through to the port. So that's all very important. But sometimes, and I mean, you know, what other people say in terms of private partnerships are very important, but sometimes you don't need so much, you just need the private. In terms of M-Pesa, sorry, I was getting a bit. M-Pesa was actually developed in a legislative vacuum. There was no, the Reserve Bank did not cover it, the cell phone companies did not cover it, and the regulator didn't cover it, and M-Pesa developed into the best solution in the world.
Yaron, I want to get some further detail on the ground, so to speak. How easy was it to set up your office in Nairobi?
The first issue was to find the right local partner, which we did, and I think that's always a key. You've got to have somebody that understands.
Did it take you a long time to find the local partner?
Yeah, we've been looking for a while. I guess we're quite cautious in Africa in general, so we did spend quite a bit of time investigating. We did find the right local partner. We believe that that's eased a lot of the local process, but our company is growing very, very fast in Kenya. We're seeing a great sense of entrepreneurship, and I think to achieve those economic goals that everybody was discussing in 2030, we need to encourage entrepreneurship. We need to see more Kenyans opening their own businesses in the small, medium enterprise sector. And M-Pesa was a great example that everybody spoke about today because it created 92,000 entrepreneurs that could basically transact with M-Pesa.
Johnny, MTN had the ability to go it alone without a local partner, or do you advocate in favor of local partnerships when trying to establish in Kenya?
We take a very similar route. We actually try and use a local partner first, not only just to, we like them to provide the service for us. So we get a good feel, a good yardstick as to how they provide that service first. We then go into a more steady partnership with them, and I think then ultimately that would lead to other discussions such as M&A, such as strategic alignments for the coming years. Going it into any country in Africa is tricky. If you don't understand the regulations, you don't understand the legal implications, you don't understand the local ownership implications, specifically what the market wants, that is critical. And I think with a local partner, you overcome a lot of those obstacles initially.
Martin, let's throw it back to you. Of course, we can't have this discussion without touching on the element of corruption. Has corruption worked its way out of the Kenyan environment? Would you be bold, so bold as to say that?
Well, what I can say is that it's an issue. It's been an issue, and part of the governance reforms has been to put in place institutions that will ensure that the punishment is such that it discourages completely attempts towards corruption. But I would say that just like in most countries, this is a problem that has got to be addressed, and Kenya is no exception.
Sven, your thoughts on corruption? Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so we're going to have to close out on this issue.
There's less corruption now than there was in the past, and the path is towards more and more less corruption. But there still is, and it's not just a factor in Kenya, it's throughout the emerging markets.
Is it ultimately going to work its way through the system?
Has it worked its way through the system in developed countries? Again, it's difficult to do a comparison. Africa is what it is, Europe is what it is, and America is what it is. So you work within what you have. There are regulations, there are a lot of challenges to overcome. But I think, as the larger corporates start going into these areas, you can't be susceptible to those types of claims. So.
But we must be realistic about what we're dealing with on the African continent. Yaron, just finally, thoughts from your side.
I think as we move towards mobile commerce and e-commerce, there's more accountability, so there's an
and
audit trail,
more
transparency, and therefore I think we're going to see that Africa is hopefully going to get rid of its corruption fairly soon.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time.
Absolutely.
We've come to the end of this week's edition of Invest Africa. We'll be back again at the same time next week. Until then, from me, Bronwyn Nielsen, and my guests, it's goodbye.